Hello and welcome back to the channel. With Halloween right around the corner, I'll be sharing 3 DIY Halloween projects with you. So let's get started. For this DIY, I used an empty paper towel roll. I marked it at about 16 cm intervals. After marking these points, I used washi tape to connect them, creating a guideline, and then I cut the roll into 2 pieces. I wanted to add more texture. For that, I grabbed Mod Podge and some paper napkins. First, I tore the paper napkins into small pieces. Then I applied a layer of Mod Podge on the roll, placed the napkin piece on it, and once more applied a thin layer of Mod Podge on top. This way, I continued covering the entire surface of the roll with napkin pieces. After the pieces dried, I used glue gun to let the hot glue drip around the roll's edge, replicating the look of a melting candle. We want to create uneven, organic shapes to mimic melting wax. We can overlap the drips as they cool to create a realistic melted appearance. I grabbed 2 of these LED tea lights to place inside the tubes. I wanted to create a base for the tea lights to sit on, so I measured the height of the tea light's base. Using the same measurements, I marked underneath the roll. Then, following the markings, I applied hot glue all the way around. Once the glue dried, I was easily able to place the tea lights on it. To paint the candles, I applied 2 to 3 coats of black acrylic paint. We also want to ensure that each layer of paint dries properly before adding another. I thought of adding some spooky elements to the candle. For that, I used a small dowel to make the handle of a witch's broom. To paint it, I mixed brown and black acrylic paint. Then I added some white paint to the same color and dry brushed it onto the handle to create the textured effect of wood. To make the bristles, I grabbed a few raffia strands, folded them several times, and cut them into small pieces. Then I trimmed the ends to level them. I held the bristles around the handle like so and wrapped a piece of jute twine 3 to 4 times to tightly secure the bristles to the handle. I tied a double knot and snipped the extra ends. To finish off, I flattened the bristles a little bit and trimmed them. I also made 2 eyeballs for the other candle, and for that I used 2 of these foam balls. I drew the outlines of the pupil and iris on the foam balls. To start off, I painted the entire eyeball with an off-white base coat. To color the iris, I used light green acrylic paint, and for the pupil, I used black acrylic paint. Then I used a fine brush, dipped it in pink acrylic paint, and created irregular veins on the eyeball starting from the back of the eyeball towards the iris. It was time to assemble all the pieces. In order to attach the eyeballs to the candle, I trimmed a small section from the foam ball to create a flat base. Then I attached the eyeballs to the candle with hot glue. I grabbed the other candle and attached the witch's broom to it. I placed the LED tea lights on them, and this completed our DIY spooky Halloween candles. To make a crystal ball, I used one of these snow globes from Dollar Store. I removed the lid and the plastic seal. We don't require the plastic seal for this DIY. Then I took an amber-colored glass paint to create a stained glass effect. You can also mix a little amount of acrylic paint to Mod Podge to create a similar look. I applied a generous amount of paint, ensuring I covered the entire interior surface of the globe. After the first coat dried, I applied another thick layer of paint. The paint might initially appear streaky, but once we flip the snow globe upside down, the paint is going to even out as it dries. It was time to embellish the lid. For that, I used a beaded necklace and some rhinestone stickers. First, I wrapped the necklace around the lid, estimating how much I was going to need. Then I cut it to size and started hot gluing it down. I applied a thin layer of hot glue and held the beads in place until the hot glue dried. Then I grabbed the rhinestone stickers and attached them above the beaded line. To paint the lid, I used black acrylic paint first, but then I switched to chalk paint since it was more opaque. If we use acrylic paint, we need to apply multiple coats of it. You can also use a black spray paint. After the paint had dried, I applied a gold metallic paint using dry brushing technique to highlight the raised areas, creating a vintage effect. I also dry brushed the gold paint on the base of the lid. The globe took about 24 hours to dry. I totally love the stain effect that we achieved with glass paint. To add more details to it, I used Mod Podge and these glitters in gold, silver, and white. I poured a small amount of Mod Podge. Then I sprinkled the glitters into it. The amount of glitter can vary depending on how sparkly we want the globe to be. I wanted it to be very sparkly, so I added quite a lot of glitter. I mixed it well, ensuring there were no clumps of glitter. Then I started to apply the glitter-infused Mod Podge onto the interior of the globe. If you want it to be more sparkly, you can apply additional coats of Mod Podge and glitter mixture once the previous layer has dried. After the Mod Podge dried, I grabbed the lid and a LED tea light. I placed the tea light inside the globe and put the lid back on. You can also use LED fairy lights for this project. So this is how our Halloween crystal ball turned out. To make the Halloween garland, I used these black, white, orange, and brown felt fabric sheets. I drew the shapes of a ghost, hat, and pumpkin. Then I cut the shapes out to use them as a template. I started off by cutting a rectangular piece of white felt. I folded the piece in half, placed the ghost cutout on it, and traced the shape onto the fabric. Then I cut the shape out with a pair of scissors. I threaded a needle with black embroidery floss, tied a couple of knots at the end to secure it. Leaving a little space along the edges, I started to do running stitches following the shape. To do running stitch, I pulled the needle from the back of the fabric to the front until the knot catched onto the fabric. Then I sent the needle back into the fabric a short distance away from the starting point and brought it back up to the front of the fabric. I continued this process, creating evenly spaced stitches following the ghost shape. I stuffed the shape with some cotton balls to create a three-dimensional look. Then I went ahead and stitched the remaining part. To secure the thread, I tied a few knots at the back and cut the extra. Using black acrylic paint, I painted the eyes and the mouth of the ghost. Using a pink marker, I added a little blush on its cheeks. In the same way, I made 3 ghosts. Next, I folded this orange felt and traced the pumpkin shape on it. Then I went ahead and cut out the shape. Now using black embroidery floss, I did running stitches following the shape as a guide. I created 2 triangular eyes and a mouth by cutting them out of black felt. I pasted them onto the pumpkin using the help of fabric glue. If you want a faster drying time, I recommend going for hot glue. Then I filled in the shape with cotton balls. I stitched the rest of it and secured the stitches by making a loop and tying a knot at the back. Just like the ghosts, I made 3 pumpkins for the garland. It was time to make the hat, so I traced the shape onto black felt fabric with a gold marker. Then I cut the shape out. To make the band of the hat, I used this reddish-brown felt fabric. I placed the hat cutout on the fabric to trace the shape and width of the band. Then I cut out the band and pasted it onto the hat with hot glue. I used white embroidery floss to do running stitches to make them pop. In the same way, I stuffed the shape with cotton and stitched the remaining section. I made 3 hats, so in total we ended up with 9 pieces. I threaded a needle with a long piece of embroidery floss and folded it in half to make it stronger. I also used these wooden beads. I started by adding 3 beads to the thread. Then I threaded the ghost onto the thread after the beads. I passed the needle through the 2 felt pieces to hide the thread. Then I added 4 more beads. Next, I strung on a pumpkin and again added 4 beads. I added the hat and 4 beads. I continued this process of alternating beads and felt shapes, repeating the same pattern. After I added all the shapes, I took this black and white piece of fabric. I cut thin strips out of the fabric. The strips were about 24 centimeters long and 2 centimeters wide. I was going to tie the fabric strips right between 2 adjacent shapes. I folded the fabric ribbon in half to create a loop. I placed the loop on the top of the thread, then I pulled the ends through the loop and tightened the knot by pulling the knot and the loose ends in opposite directions. This way I continued tying the ribbons between 2 felt pieces. Once everything was set, I grabbed 2 of these small wooden beads, added them on each end of the garland and secured them by tying a couple of knots. This completed our DIY Halloween garland. You can hang it over fireplace or on the walls to add a touch of spookiness to your home. That's all for today. I hope you liked these DIYs. Stay tuned for more exciting DIY projects coming your way. Until then, stay spooky and have a wonderful Halloween. Please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe and ring the bell. Thanks for watching.